Hello, ladies.
Hello, we are back in with Effie.
Round two.
Round two.
Whereabouts are you today, Effie? Are you still abroad?
Yeah, so I'm in Portugal, in Lisbon. Yeah, it's really nice, but it is getting us slightly colder. It's like 20s now, so I'm getting cold.
I mean, I would take that. I don't know about you, Steff.
I would take that being up here in Aberdeen where it's absolutely Baltic already.
Yeah, I feel super lucky that 20 degrees is getting cold. So yeah, but the winter is definitely coming. I say that with like blue skies and 23 or 24 something today, but it's coming for sure.
And how long are you going to be there for?
I live here permanently, so I have my house here, have all my stuff here. Yeah, it's really nice, but I'm debating whether or not to escape the winter and go somewhere else. Maybe January, February, March-ish. So we'll see.
That sort of ties into where we're going to talk about traveling and intuitive eating as well.
Because
I always find when I go abroad, because you never really know what's going to be available. Sometimes it's like, especially if it's a completely different language, it's like, how do I try and sort of hit macros, even if it's loosely or food plan or whatever it is, when you don't even know what the produce is, and it's like, oh my god. So it'd be really good today to talk a bit about that as well, alongside the main topic of intuitive eating.
Definitely.
It's obviously you've come away from bodybuilding per se competing, but it is quite a mind warp anyway, like Steff and I touched on in the last pod, trying to stick to goals and a healthy lifestyle, just using your mind and what you know, but in different scenarios as well. It's really tricky.
Yeah, that's the thing is, although I'm not competing anymore, I don't kind of classify myself as a bodybuilder anymore. Like I still want to be healthy and be in, an optimal state for my age and my health and what my kind of goals are and what my days require me to kind of do in terms of my work. And, all of those things are still kind of very much at the top of my mind. Like I still want to be healthy, eat well, train hard. And I have to kind of take all those things into account. I can't kind of, just because I'm now not bodybuilding, although I'm not kind of macro tracking or trying to hit specific macros, I still very much try to focus on having a balanced, nutritionally dense diet. And especially when you're traveling or overseas or anything like that, it adds in a whole nother level of complexity. But I think, as you're kind of saying, like the library of food information and combinations that you build up as you kind of diet, as you prep, can all come in use when you're abroad, and you kind of have to look at a shelf and be like, right, what can I pick from here that's going to make sense for me?
Yeah, and especially if you are a competitor as well, traveling abroad and competing, because we've all done that. It's like, how am I going to do this? And I don't know about you two, but I take like tins of tuna, packet rice, peaches that are in like the tins and stuff, so that I know I've got like a foundation. But it's really difficult, even in some countries, to get like lean meat.
I remember when I can't remember if I told you guys the story in the last pod or not, but when I was competing in the Arnold Classic in Spain, I can't remember what city it was in, Barcelona, we went to the supermarket to go get fish because like I was in peak week and I just had white fish to buy, and I was like, this is easy, I'll just buy white fish from the freezer section, or fresh white fish, whatever. And we got back and we were cooking it and we were like, oh my god, this tastes so good. Like, are we just so deep in prep that white fish is just tasting incredible? I don't know. And we actually turned up to the day before where we did our registration, and a bunch of the other girls from England, they were just like, oh my gosh, have you noticed that they salt their fish here? And we were like, oh no. That's why it tastes so good. And also, like, obviously that would have messed up with our sodium intakes over peak week, and so we were kind of panic calling our coaches, being like, what do we do? We've eaten salted fish. Having no idea that it's completely normal in Europe for them to like pre-salt fish. It's like such a normal thing, like especially, I found in Portugal, it's definitely something that's just like normal, and you have to kind of work your ways around it. So there are definitely challenges, especially when you're so close to a show. Like, you want to, as you did, kind of take as much pre-made stuff as possible, but kind of not in a, you know, there's got to be a line where it just becomes gross.
Like suction foods.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, because when you're going to countries that are predominantly English speaking, or a lot of their foods are packaged in English, it's a lot easier. Like when you go and travel and you're competing in America, or I don't know, if you're going further afield, Australia, New Zealand, all these places, and you go somewhere like Spain, and a lot of their packaging is not in your language. You're not like looking out for those little things that might be different. You're just kind of looking at the pictures and thinking like, this is kind of exactly what I need.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's that ambiguity around the products. Yeah,
especially when you have prep brain, you don't even think. Like now I would be just like, well, obviously you look for, like, it says con sal or whatever it is in Spanish, you know. Like if it's with or without salt. But
yeah. And I suppose going back to the subject of intuitive eating, whether that's around, because like you say, in a peak week, everything's so structured, so it wouldn't really be intuitive in that direction. But for all of us, I mean, I'm intuitive eating at the moment. Steff, what are you?
Yeah, I'd probably say you could class me in the intuitive eating. You want to call it kind of where I'm at. I'm eating for my health and what I need, but not necessarily to fit a box and a plan and a grander scheme. Like I'm just, what I feel I need to eat, I'll eat. But if I don't want something, I won't force it either.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'll be there.
Yeah. And Effie, I guess, would you say that your lifestyle's sort of intuitive eating away from like the macros and stuff now?
Yeah, I would definitely classify it as intuitive eating, 100%.
Because I suppose as well, it may be worth us explaining what intuitive eating is, because I actually had someone ask me the other day, what do you mean by intuitive eating? And it was like, oh, you know, I explained it in how, you know, I would put it across. But Effie, how would you, because you work with clients to do that, don't you? So how would you?
I don't currently work with clients, just to make that clear.
Because when we last spoke, you were sort of still doing some stuff, weren't you?
It was more the transition period, but I'm now 100% working with a company actually based in the US, within their operations department. So it's nothing to do actually with nutrition anymore.
So no clients at all now?
Mm-mm.
So when you were doing work with clients that it was based on more the intuitive way, how would you sort of surmise that to them and explain it if you were trying to get across what it was?
Yeah, you know what, it's actually pretty much exactly what Steff said. It's about eating to what you feel your body needs, what your training also kind of needs you to be able to do, as well as being able to be in tune with your hunger cues. And if you're hungry, you can eat. And if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. Whereas when you're kind of trying to eat to macros or eat in a specific deficit with macros, even if you're hungry, it doesn't necessarily mean you can eat. So it's kind of really paying attention to what your body is asking you for, as well as having nothing that is off limits. So it's really that kind of like, if you feel like having a candy bar, you can have a candy bar. But, you know, just like take into consideration everything else that then means when you make that decision. It's being informed in your decisions, being able to make decisions based on what you feel like and what you want, as well as obviously having the overarching goal of whatever it is you're working towards at that moment.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Steff, being quite fresh to the tracking. The main thing that I find is I still eat to a certain time. So I always eat at the same time each day. And that's I tried to come away from it, but then it like pulls me back. And I'm like, every 3-4 hours, and I eat at the same time pretty much every day. And it's like, I need to try and stop doing this. But...
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, like intuitive eating to me is almost, if you've been somebody who's gone, and all three of us have, who've gone through a period of time where we've had to create behaviours around foods to suit a goal, like bodybuilding or like whatever else we've done. Getting back to intuitive eating or normal patterns of eating is when you get to this place where actually exactly what you're saying, Effie, which is it's almost present eating. It's eating when you feel like you need to eat, but not feeling pressured that it has to be because of some other grand thing that's going on around you. And I would relate intuitive eating to the way I used to eat before bodybuilding even came into my life. You know what I mean?
Like normal.
Normal eating, and just being sensible, and exactly what you said. If I want to have something that's maybe higher calorific dense foods, but because I want it, maybe I'm out and you know what, it's a beautiful day and I fancy getting an ice cream or something like that, I'll do it because the environment I'm in, the social context, the whatever else is going on, and I don't feel guilty about that because it's a choice I've made presently given the environment, and I enjoy that. So it's part of a bigger picture. But I think it's an interesting one for me because it's become really popular, the topic of intuitive eating. But where does it come from? Has it come from people who are trying to get back to normal eating patterns? Or is it just something that we're now trying to own more of ourselves and our eating patterns and health eating rather than just, I don't know, going into the shop and buying ready meals and stuff like that? Do you know what I mean?
That's a really interesting question. I think my initial thoughts when you said that were, yes, possibly people coming back from a dieting phase into perhaps less kind of restrictive or less kind of boundary dictated eating patterns. But also, I'm thinking maybe it might be some sort of kind of retaliation from all these rules that the bodybuilding community has built around food and around eating that actually none of them really matter, really. And maybe it's just like that kind of that school of people that are just like, now we can eat when we want and still lose weight. It's literally how humans originally ate. Let's try and get back to that.
Yeah, because there's so many, like we've said before, Steff, with the bodybuilding, there's so many things like you have to spike protein synthesis every 3 to 5 hours, or you're going to lose all your gains. You have to have, you know, lean meat. And then there was this, obviously the movement with vegan, and now that seems to be okay. But at first it was like, oh my God, you can't be vegan. There's so many, like you say, Effie, sort of rules in the bodybuilding world that are now being exposed and changed. And there's research now, you know, as long as you hit your macros in 24 hours or, you know, even longer, then it's pretty much, you know, you're going to be bang for your buck. And it's not necessarily that you have to have a certain amount of carbs, fat and protein every time you eat. But there's still so many sort of old school rules that people follow. And it's really hard to come away from that world when it is so intense to then, you know, drop that air of like, I'm okay to eat what I want to within reason, and I can, you know, offset things if I need to.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, piece of work I do with a lot of my clients before they start any kind of, you know, bodybuilding journey or fitness journey is talking about where their habits are now. When you go into a crazy goal, especially when you do it as maybe as long as, or me and you, Sarah, have, you can almost forget normal, what normal actually looks like. And I mean, everyone's normal is going to be slightly different, but it's taken me a really, really long time to even get to here now, where I can wake up and it might be, I don't know, say it's 7 and I'm really not that hungry actually that morning, and that's cool. I might just delay my breakfast till quite a lot later on, and that's fine. And then I'll eat it when I want to eat it and I enjoy it because I'm hungry for it and I'm ready for it. And actually, for me, cognitively in that time was good.
Yeah.
But for me to even get here after the years of I have to, or upon waking within 1 hour, I'm eating this meal. And then I'm going to go and do this. And I have to eat my meal 2.5 hours later, etc. It's exactly what you said, Effie. It's unpicking these kind of crazy time schedules of eating patterns and what you should eat, when you should eat, how you should eat, that can institutionalize you and make you feel like if you eat normally again, that's wrong, which is ridiculous. So yeah, it's finding balance with remembering what normal looks like. And then if you do go into a big goal, and this is what I always talk about with my guys when we come back to the off season, and Sarah, I've spoken to you about this, there's got to be balance and getting back to a healthy habit pattern of eating for what your body's wanting as well as your goal. Because it can't just be 24/7, eat like a bodybuilder all day long. So that's just not realistic. Well,
like we say, occasions and everything, like, is it realistic that you're never going to have, like, you know, birthdays, Christmas, whatever it may be? I don't know about you, Steff, but I find a bit like what you were saying about sometimes upon waking, you're not necessarily that hungry. What I've been doing at the moment is in the week when I'm just working and everything's, you know, you go to work at the same time, train at the same time, pretty much eating the same thing, but on the lower side. And then like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll have higher calorie things, like if someone's baked something for me, or I go out for a meal, and I feel like almost I've saved some in the bank by eating a bit lower in the week, and then I feel more comfortable. Just for me, I just find, I guess mentally, I'm like, well, I know I've been quite low in the week, I've done a bit of cardio, a bit of this, bit of that, and I can be objective about it. Whereas before it would be like, I have to do 3,000 calories cardio, I can't eat anything in the week, I can have one meal at the weekend, and it was so like stressful that it wasn't even worth really doing it. But now I feel much more comfortable. But again, it's with experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like, I had a very similar kind of experience with the whole breakfast thing. So I would always have my like oats with peanut butter and frozen berries, and like that was it. And like if I didn't have that, my day was ruined. Like routine's gone. Like the whole day starts with that. And I was just like, I'm just going to try intermittent fasting, because at that point I decided I wasn't going to compete anymore. This was also after my scales broke, because I know that I told you guys a story last time, my food scales. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to not eat. I'm going to just wait until I'm hungry on my lunch break. At the time I was working at Superdry. I'm just going to wait until I'm hungry on my lunch break and see how that feels. And it was hard at first, obviously, because you have the habit of eating in the morning. But slowly I started to realize, I was just like, I really don't, like, I actually feel sharper in the morning. Like I feel better. I don't feel like it's kind of like heavy and kind of full in the morning. And I really like that feeling. And so I started to just continue to do it. And I've been doing it for 3.5 years now. Like I had a period where I would have a protein shake in the morning, and I kind of called it like protein sparing intermittent fasting, to still kind of make sure that I was having like some form of protein in the morning. But like overall now I don't have that. I literally will eat at 2:00 after my training session. So I'll work, do my full 2-hour training session, and then come back and then eat. And only really sometimes I feel a bit hungry, and that's usually either when I'm running in the gym or like during my stretching afterwards, and I'm just like, yeah, I can eat now. But really, like, this technique was the savior of my traveling balanced lifestyle. Like hands down, intermittent fasting was like the #1 rule that changed the game for me when I was traveling.
Have you tried that, Steff?
I don't think I've consciously tried it, but I've done it, if you know what I mean. And I think actually I'm probably at a stage where you are. I really believe that the body has its own sort of circadian rhythm with sleep, with when it needs to be hungry, when it needs to be fueled. Like I'm not a very good morning person, never have been. I'm not firing really until probably about 10ish, and then for the rest of the day I'm on it. By about 4 I'm like probably at the peak of my game. Like that's kind of how my sort of body and mind work. And I just generally do now. And it's just from coming away, I think, you know what happened as well, like through COVID, we all had to change and adapt quite quickly. And it's probably the first time I've actually not had a set, like out the house, do this, do that. And everything was just purely here. And really it was out of that I started being quite intuitive and started to actually probably have breakfast more so around, like when I was getting up, which was like 9:30, 10ish, which is really late for me usually. But it felt so much better because I might have got up at 7, maybe had a coffee, done a bit of yoga, did a bit of work, and then I was hungry for it. And that's just organically how it's happened. I would say that's my pattern now, just now. And I love eating like that because I'm just thinking about when I want to eat. And my training's always in the afternoon. So I make sure that there's enough food in my system for that training. And then the actual higher dense foods are going in post-training for me. And again, it goes back to, I suppose, what you said, Sarah, which is like eating around, the things that it's putting the calories where you want them to be best. I guess. Yeah.
And after a bit like you said, when you're stretching, Effie, after a training session, it's like, you feel all right. And then suddenly it's like, I think I can eat now. And then you've got the actual hunger there. Like you actually feel like you want to have maybe the higher carbohydrates and some fats, compared to in the morning I can easily fast. It's not a problem, is it? You might walk, or like you said, do some yoga or something, and it doesn't feel that hard. Whereas after training, it's like, I could definitely eat now. Are you guys do you still prioritize protein? Because that's something I can't tend to drop? I find that quite a hard one.
So I was actually going to say, what's really interesting is the way that, and I'm sure you wouldn't mind me highlighting this, the way that you kind of talk about carbs and fats, or carbs pre-workout, carbs, fats post-workout. In my head, I'm just thinking of food. Like, I'm like, oh, I just want avocado and feta and some chicken in like a big salad. And like, I think that's where I'm at in this kind of journey of balanced lifestyle and intuitive eating, is that food is food to me. Food isn't macros to me anymore. And it took me a long time to get past that. No, but this is also what I wanted to say before, is some things are useful for some people. Some things aren't useful for other people. Like intuitive eating, it is not for everyone. 100% is not for everyone. Same as kind of, if you want to eat every 4 hours because that makes you feel good, then do that. There's nothing wrong with any of these things that we're kind of like talking about. There's no right or wrong. It's just like figuring out what's best for you, which is kind of what we've all said. Like, all of us have found ways that are the best for us and make us feel the best. But yeah, going back to kind of the food thing, is post-workout, yes, I'll prioritize protein, but it's not kind of a conscious thing anymore for me. I'm not just like, oh, I must make sure I get protein in because I'm just in a workout. It's more just kind of like, you know, I'll have a chicken salad like I always do. And, you know, that's part of a habit for me. And the habit in that is also, what kind of foods do I want to like eat? What is my body telling me that I actually want to eat right now? Whether it's like bacon and avocado and feta, like a higher fat meal post-workout, or do I actually want something like a rice salad or with chicken and stuff like that? So that's like a really just interesting contrast. So I know that you asked us both about prioritizing protein. So Steff, you can now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably, it's because I'm not fully, like, I'm contemplating going back into sort of my prep and things next year. So for me, this is a bit of an experimental time. I don't normally do any of this, but I'm just going with the flow of my work life, my balance. Similar to you, Effie, I'm kind of a bit of both here. I've still got the kind of mindset of, I've got to have protein here and there. But then I'm also over here, like, thinking, I'm out at the moment, and that like cranberry encrusted salmon thing sounds amazing. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm going for a bit of both. I won't not have things that I feel like I want the taste and I want the experience of the foods. But then I am still holding on to that little bit of, okay, I must have a protein with every meal. And, you know, I'm still kind of in that place. And will I ever get rid of that? I don't know, because it's my life, because I'm doing this all the time. I think it is entrenched a little bit. However, I'm always open to considerations of other types of diets and ways to eat and balancing your psychology with foods, because I think this is a huge part of it. I think even to intuitively eat and to be balanced with eating, you have to have quite a lot of, I think, self-control and understanding of yourself too.
Yeah.
Because if your self-esteem is floored, and, you know, I've got a few people that I work with at the moment who struggle with behaviors around foods, and so much of it is interlinked with their psychology. And it's just like, I think there's a lot of self-development stuff that helps you get to the place where you feel quite comfortable going out and eating what you want. It's kind of, there's a lot of that. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, and especially post-show, very, very tricky time. I mean, I only competed 3.5 weeks ago, so I guess,
oh my God, it's only that close, Jesus.
Yeah, so I guess it's the, like, we've almost got 3 stages of intuitive eating, you know. And I think, Steff, definitely like you, I'd find it really difficult to drop some of those things like the protein. Like, I'm always, the other day I was like, right, okay, so I'm going to eat, and I wanted to have a yogurt that was like 15 grams of protein and some fruit. And then I was like, how can I get that extra 10 grams of protein to make it a 25 gram minimum? I haven't really got anything. What's going to go with this yogurt? So I ended up having like 100 grams of egg whites. And then I'm like, I didn't actually need to do that, but I'm still programmed into that. But I definitely feel like this stab at intuitive eating, or, you know, trying to relax off a little bit, has been my most successful yet, because I've never done it for this long for a start. But it's nice. I feel like I'm getting a bit of a flow, but it's really hard to drop all of those structures that you put in place for a prep. I can't imagine I'd ever come away from that, the protein the minimum of 25 to 30 grams every time I eat.
Do you know, like, another thing I find really challenging as well, and I actually thought about this the other day. I don't know about you ladies, but I'm not a very good cook. And this is, I genuinely think as well, like it's been born out of years of just kind of being really simple eating and not really ever spending the time to even look at things to make that aren't really plain. So sometimes I'll think, oh, I could really fancy making something else, but I feel like I have no skills at all to actually apply to putting things together or making things up. And I've got myself like a few like nice healthy kind of cookbooks things just to kind of play with, more stuff like poke balls, quinoa stuff, like just big salads or things that you wouldn't think of putting together. And I found that something really helpful for me because it allowed me to still eat all of the nice healthy foods whilst I am, and I'm going to be present with this, but whilst I am still going through I still think about macros, but how do I make them actually really enjoyable meals I can cook or make in the house now? Whereas I've never thought like that before.
I guess that's a sign of how you're getting on though, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a rubbish cook though, mind.
We can only get better.
I
don't know about you with cooking. I still very much, I get almost like if a recipe said X amount of oil and then X amount, it's mainly fats that scare me a little bit. I guess from being in a prep and the fats going quite low, I find it really hard to like sparingly add ingredients when I know what the macros are. And I'd imagine most people coming off the back of a prep or if they've prepped before, that would always be a consideration in the back of my mind. So I'm like, can I get half fat butter instead of full fat? Can I make this work? Whereas it'd be quite nice to just be able to do it, what the recipe says. But I definitely don't feel like I'm at that stage just yet. But I look forward to being able to delve into that a bit more. I find that if someone makes me something, as long as I don't know what's in it, I'll eat it. It's just almost like if I cook it and I put the ingredients in and I know it's higher fat or higher carbs, it's like, oh God, I know that that's that much and that's that much. Did you have that at all when you came away from it, Effie?
Yes, I definitely did. And I definitely do and have struggled with the things that both of you are talking about. And I think, like the healthy recipe book stuff that you mentioned, I think like that is key. The recipes that you find when you Google like pasta dishes and the BBC Good Food pasta dishes, and they do use heaps of oil, they use heaps of cream and like bacon and all this stuff. Yeah, but also like there are healthier options and alternatives in these like healthy recipe books, or instead of using cream, you could use like almond milk or something, or like light Philadelphia, and instead of like full oil, you can use like a low fat butter or something like that. There are always switches that you can make. And I do want to point out that the goal isn't always to be able to have these, make these recipes with no restrictions. It's, you still have to make healthy decisions. And yes, these recipes, like perhaps they're not the best for whatever it is that your goal is, whether that's like just keeping a good body composition year round and keeping your head on. Like if I were, like even now, if I were to make something from like a normal cookbook, if I did make it like ingredient to ingredient, maybe I probably wouldn't actually really want it because it just doesn't fit with my goals. It doesn't fit with my headspace. So if I were to just like switch some things out and like use low fat alternatives or low calorie alternatives or whatever, like then it would be a way more enjoyable experience from start to finish. And I think that's also okay. It's not about kind of going all in with these like recipes. And also, as another point, it's not about letting go and never thinking about protein for every meal. It's finding a balance of what works for you. Like, yes, you want some more freedom with your mindset around protein per meal, but you don't have to let it go completely. Remember, the majority of the population don't even know that you should have protein in like the 3 meals that the majority of the population eat per day. Like, that is such a key thing to help people understand how protein does help with satiety, with general body composition, with health in general. So you've just got to find like the balance between it. It's not letting it go completely, it's just finding kind of a way that helps you mentally and physically. It doesn't hold you back, but also doesn't like let you kind of go all loose.
We spoke about last week, didn't we, Steff, about you sort of sometimes look at choices and especially now, there's everything you look at. So say you go to Costa, McDonald's, the calories are there, and that doesn't help us sometimes because we're trying to come away from maybe, you know, calorie counting as much and being so intense. But then you find yourself choosing the lower calorie one, even if you don't really like it that much, because you think, oh, well, it's the lower calorie one. And a couple of weeks ago, I went for a meal, and normally, like, I do take my own light mayo in my bag because I don't normally have full fat mayo. It just doesn't sit well for me because I prefer the taste, and I just think I don't want to do that. But then I didn't have it, so I was like, I'm going to have some full fat mayo. And then and then I had some, and I was like, wow, this is actually quite nice.
Quite good.
I haven't had it for so long. I was like, I'd forgotten, which is what we were saying last week, Steph. You sort of forget what things taste like because you put that block as to, I don't want to use my calories on that. But actually, sometimes it might be quite nice too.
Yeah. I think as well, like when you start to feel like happy with making healthy choices when you're out and about, you tend to like go, like if you just take Costa, what you just explained there.
Yeah.
I often go into places like Costa, or say you just go to even the sandwich bit in an Asda or whatever else to pick something up, and they're so limited in actually what you can choose that is a healthy option. Like, because even though some of these sandwiches or small little, I don't know, pots of whatever they've got are in there, they're not, for me, they're not that fulfilling. Like, they're not something that, whether they're low or high calorie, I would kind of choose anyway. So actually it's highlighted to me that there's not like a massive amount of options if you do want to go out and find a really nice chunky, you know, chicken salad, or
Oh yeah.
you know, like, just because I love all that. I love all that. And I've found that in my off season, I've pinpointed places where I'm from that like do the kind of stuff that I love.
Yeah.
And I go to those places quite regularly because I go in and I know that even though I might not be tracking it, they just hit the spot for me nutritionally. Like, I love what they have in their menu, and that for me I've never really had that before. So for me, it's kind of made me realize like the types of foods that I really enjoy and what I want to spend my money on when I'm going out, and not worrying too much about what it is, because going back to some of the things you just said, Effie, it's got some of maybe the ingredients and things in it that actually I love now, that I realize that I love, which is fun. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's another side to it. The intuitive side of eating is finding places, because one person might like to go down to Greg's and get a hot sausage roll. Another person might like to go down to, like, I've got a health food cafe down at the beach here, which is amazing, and they do like huge, big, chunky breakfasts, like with loads of fruit and avocado and everything else. Is amazing, and I love that. That's my thing. Neither one is right or wrong. It just got to fit in with what you're doing, who you are, and having balance across the week, I guess, to keep you feeling healthy in your own body. It's yeah.
Because it can be really scary as well, like especially we spoke about in the last pod, I think, Effie, when you were talking about when you'd go to like a family roast, and even something like that, how that can be quite pressurizing when you're in a prep, or you've just come out the back of that, or you're still, you know, in between shows or whatever. When you're presented with all this choice and potential comments and judgment and whatever else happens in social scenarios, it can really overwhelm you. And, you know, when I go out for meals, I always make a change to the menu. But then I know quite a few chefs, and they've said to me, as a chef, they don't actually mind if you say, look, I'd prefer that plain, can you just grill my chicken rather than fry it or whatever? They don't mind. But it's sometimes the people that are around you as well that go, oh God, can't you just have a normal meal?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've both been there. It's really isolating. But then if you can take ownership for what you're doing and feel comfortable with what you're doing, that definitely helps.
That's the key. Is like, you've just got to own it. Like, you know, the other people at the table don't have to eat what you're eating.
Yeah.
You know, you're just choosing to have that yourself. And I think it's just about who you surround yourself with. If people are going to make you feel crap about the choices you're making, don't hang around with them. Like, literally just draw a line. And you're only like, you just got to be around people who support your goals and support what it is that you're trying to achieve, and those people will help you in that, and they won't mind, you know, they don't care. As long as you're happy and you're doing what you want to do, then that should be the most important thing.
Yeah, and it's actually refreshing as well. You probably had it when you were working with clients, Effie and Steff, for you when you're maybe putting people into an off season. Vic, who will listen back to this, a client of mine, she actually had a week off the gym and she intuitively ate without realizing. So she was like, I haven't tracked, but I have tracked. And I was like, this is exactly what a lot of bodybuilders strive for when they come out of the bodybuilding world, to get to that point where they have a period of time where they're consciously trying to keep things like the protein up, having, you know, fat sparingly or a higher fat meal and less fats during the day, having the carbohydrates throughout the day as they fancy. Then they go towards where you're currently at, Effie. And that's, you know, I've heard on so many different podcasts and things, I don't know about you guys, but that's almost like the bodybuilder's dream if they're coming away from competing, to be able to do that and it to sit well basically in their own mind.
Mm-hmm. And it takes so much trial and error and so much time as well. Like, you can't force these things. Like, although, you know, even people who have only prepped for one show or, you know, a season, the behaviors that you learn, you have to ingrain to such an extent that it does take a long time for you to unlearn them, and not unlearn them entirely. You know, obviously you'll take away the good parts of it and the things that you want to keep, you know, to keep doing whatever it is that you want to do. But, you know, it is really important to take into account that it does take time. Like, for instance, I recently went on holiday just down to the south of Portugal with my family, and we were away at a villa for about, I think it was about a week, maybe just over a week. And it was the first time, I think, in almost 2 years that I hadn't trained properly for a whole week. And I didn't even think about it. Like, I didn't even think like, oh my God, I'm not going to train for a week. What am I going to do? Should I bring like my dumbbells, my bands? Like, should I find a gym somewhere that's close by that I can drive to and go train? I just didn't think about it. I was just like, if I feel like running, I'll go for a run. I ended up running 5K every day and going out on the bikes every day because I just love movement. But it wasn't to counteract the fact that I wasn't weight training or the fact that I was eating more because I was with my family on a holiday. Mm-hmm. So, like, to even get to that point and recognize that myself was like a huge win, because before that, the only other time that I had that much time off the gym was when I had my breast augmentation and I literally couldn't train. So the contrast between that, like being physically unable to train and then trying to get back into the gym literally as soon as I could, versus having the choice and not even thinking about it, that in itself is like a huge, I mean, 1.5, 2 year progression where, you know, it hasn't even phased me that I had a week off. Most people are just like, I can't remember the last time I had a week off the gym, or even 3 days off the gym. And I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. It's what it is. Nothing, the world didn't end. My body didn't like suddenly blow up. So
I think a big point there is the counteraction. And Steff, you must find it. I mean, you've got a lot of clients, and whether it's prep or off season, it's that almost that continuous nag in the back of your mind as a bodybuilder. I find, how can I counteract this so I can do this, and how can I do this so I can, and it is, you know, admittedly, if we're being honest, for me, it's always there. It doesn't matter what I'm doing or what the scenario is. I'm always thinking, how much have I eaten for the rest of the day? And then I've just eaten that. So should I go for a long walk tomorrow? Because then that will mean I can do that again tonight. And it's always swirling around. It becomes quieter, but it's always there. And I don't know, Steff, have you got some insight as to working with people there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I just reflect on even my own self recently, mine's almost been the opposite. And this is really weird for me because I've been, I would say, under eating due to the workload that I've got at the moment. And because of my workload, I'm finding I'm delving in and I'm just plugged in for hours, and then I'll forget. And I'll go, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten for this while. And my mind will go into, I won't be making as much progression.
Yeah.
There might be some muscle tissue loss, which is just ridiculous stuff like I already know myself. But there's that psychology that taps in, you know, that I'll be in the gym later and I'll go in my head, I know I've not eaten enough today to support this workout, and I might be kind of suppressed training here, and I've maybe not got enough fuel to hit what I want. And that's just a kind of a negative self-talk loop that I'm stuck in. When the reality is, you know, over the course of a full week, it's probably not done anything. But it's, some days you might eat loads, some days you might not. And it's all in the grand scheme of what that looks like. And I do a lot of work with my own crew about this. I'd say though, 90% of the people I work with are really heavily into their goal of progressing their physique or getting on stage at the moment. So that routine, of course, for them, in terms of the food patterns and what they're eating, is quite straightforward, and they're in an easy flow with it. I actually think it's harder when you're working with, say, the 20% of clients that I have at the moment who are struggling with certain eating behaviors or patterns, and we actually have to unpick all of these things that we're speaking about that we've all learnt. And they are so deeply entrenched. Things like fruit's bad for you. That's what you get, you know, in bloody bodybuilding. We're told not to eat any fruit because of the sugars in fruit. But fruit is so healthy for you. It's, you know, there's a reason why we have eat 5 to 7 portions of fruit and veg a day. These are statutory guidelines that, you know, we have got from the food standards agencies to teach us about health and nutrition for our bodies. And it's like we're just completely going against these things when we're bodybuilding or doing any of these crazy goals. So it's going back to basics and saying, no, let's nourish the body. And how do we do that? Well, here's all the food groups that we have available to us. Let's start playing with these things a little bit more and getting, and I had a client last week say, I can't believe how much I love strawberries. I haven't had strawberries for so long. And it's just, it's mad, isn't it? You just think it's something as simple as that. They've not allowed themselves to eat for so long, and suddenly it's there in their diet, and they feel great when they're eating it. They love the flavor of it, and it's a healthy food source. It's not full of sugars and laden. It's not going to put tons of fat on you, you know, like that we get all this kind of crazy talk. But yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's like with me, I'm conscious that I don't eat enough at the moment, which is also something I kind of go into that deep, horrible route, especially if you're a female bodybuilder and you want to get bigger and stronger and all these kind of thoughts in your head. And you see everybody coming through the ranks at the moment and you go, oh my God. Like, standards
it's like in the back of your mind, isn't it?
Well, the standards are just getting crazy. Some of them are just crazy. And you're thinking, you know, do you really want to chase that? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's completely different now to even when I competed in 2019. When I go to shows now, I'm like, bloody hell, this is like a different world. And it's only 2 years ago, and it's only going to probably get more so as time ticks by. And a bit about sort of tapping into the health side, I find if I'm not careful and when I've competed and then I'm only having, say, a week off, maybe I'm going on holiday or I'm just going to have a week of not tracking, I guess prioritize the things that I would not have had in a prep. So I end up having like one vegetable in a whole day and no fruit. So I'm having like baked goods and a meal out that's like chips and a burger or something. And I've got like a lettuce leaf and that's it for the whole day. But I'm full because I'm eating foods that I haven't. So you've also got that. And then you feel like shit, to be honest. At the end of the week, you're thinking, bloody hell. And you want your chicken and broccoli. So there's that other end of, you know, trying to get that balance, and it does come with practice, like you say, Effie, just practicing, making mistakes, but being cool with that. You know, everything that you get good at comes with mistakes, potential failure, but it's not really, is it? It's lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is with all of this, it's about learning how to let go of control. Because when you're in prep, like everything is about control, everything is controlled, everything is measured. And the second that you take something away, there is that feeling of loss of control. And I think you guys would agree that most people who are into bodybuilding love being in control. It's like just part of our personality, I think. 100%. And I think when you start to take things away, like, you know, like my body weight scales or my food scales or them not having breakfast, these are all things that are taking away control of the overall kind of picture of what I was doing at that time. And it's learning how to be okay with it and understanding that you can slowly start to let things go that you thought you had to be in control of. And, you know, it's the same thing with all of these kind of thinking patterns or beliefs or structures or routines, or even the belief that, you know, when you have a week off of tracking, that you can't still eat what it is that you love to eat, like chicken salads, they make you feel good. Eat a chicken salad. It's not off limits because you're on holiday. And, you know, realizing that vegetables and fruit make you feel awesome, so eat them more.
Absolutely. And don't track them. That's something I always say, especially to people like in the off season. Just get, you know, fruit and veg is not off limits. You can have as much of that as you want. That is the good stuff. And it makes you feel good. And hydration too, you know, just water. Generally, people tend to not drink at all or not enough. And then when they start to drink enough, they suddenly feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like actually cognitively so much better. Yeah, it's just amazing that so many people forget to drink too, and mistake thirst for hunger, and vice versa as well. Can be, you know, it's amazing, that side of things. But yeah, I agree with everything you've just said, Effie. It's all about that letting go. I've not actually thought about it as much as that, but when you're saying that, you definitely can see the correlations between needing to be in control and having that structure and being really on it in a prep or an off season, and then you take that away, and you have to relinquish that, because otherwise you'll just drive yourself mad.
Yeah, I think you both mentioned as well about learning what you actually want, like that your body's like, oh, I really fancy some avocado and eggs or whatever it is. I think as well, part of sort of branching off from that is, if you are going for a meal or a family occasion or whatever, don't feel like you can't have what you want on those occasions. You don't have to follow the crowd. That was definitely a turning point for me. I always used to feel like people would be like, you must want X, Y, and Z. And I didn't, but I didn't want to make a fuss. And then it was like this, like, oh God, I don't know what to do. Whereas you could go, okay, so I'm going to have a bit of that, and it sits well with you. It's what you fancy, and you have a really nice time you can immerse in. You're not feeling guilty. You're not feeling like you're pressurized. But again, ownership, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, making the decision and then just going with it, and not, if you've made a measured, calculated decision about something like that, then you cannot let it take over your mind, because you've made the decision in a measured way, so you've just got to go with it. Yeah,
that's definitely hard for me. I don't know about you, got like transitioning away from having that, I guess, that sort of warped relationship with food that does come about from a prep sometimes, not all the time, but there is certain things that they are off limits in a prep. So to then welcome them back, it is tricky.
Yeah. It's funny. I think, you know, I often say, like, I think we've said this a million times, Sarah, when some people come into preps for the wrong reasons around food, because they see that as a way of being able to actually control their food problems.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make them go away and come out of that situation. They're still there and they still have to be dealt with. But I suppose where you're at, you're a sensible, smart woman who's always you've always done your preps sort of with that more macro tracking approach. So it's not like you've been the complete extreme end of the scale where you're only eating chicken and rice every single day, or fish and a rice cake for every single day.
Not the fish and rice cake guy.
I had to get it.
Oh God, no, not him.
We're not going to put a link in the description for that.
Absolutely not.
Oh God. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, you've not been to that extreme sort of side of bodybuilding where people come out of it and then they're like faced with choice, and that makes people panic and emotional eat, and then binge eating things come out, and problems around just generally maybe your gut health, because you've been stuck with these rigid foods for so long, and suddenly you start putting other things in. Like, where you're at is sort of, you've done quite a bit for the macro tracking side of things, but you're just starting to allow that, okay, I can have those other bits too. And that's totally natural, I think, coming off a prep, because it is a long time to be focused on a goal. And with any sort of goal you get to it, you have a finish line, and then you have to transcend and move into something else. And with that comes a bit of discomfort. And this is probably where you're at, is just figuring out what foods that you're okay with. And then I'll try a little bit of this, like your mayonnaise, and then that was enough for that day. And then I'll try something else. And you know what I mean? And that's part of it.
And
that's part of it.
It is definitely that control element. Like, when I look back to when I started, you know, bodybuilding for me it saved me in the sense of, like, I felt like I'd never had control in my whole life. You know, my whole upbringing it wasn't ideal in certain respects, and there were so many things against me, and finally I could be good at something. But then it unleashed this like neurotic control freak, I guess. And then it's like coming away from that. But like you say, Effie, I think we've all got an element of control, as I don't think we'd maybe be that good at bodybuilding if we didn't have that, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, like, you know, just to kind of add another example onto realizing what foods you want and understanding that some foods you actually can have but that you couldn't have during a prep. Like, I've always been, I don't know when it started, but avocado was never usually a thing. I went through a period where I didn't even remember the last time I bought an avocado, because I was just like, it was just a thing that I just didn't buy. It just wasn't an option to eat. And I wasn't really that interested in it. Wasn't that fussed, never ate it. And really only recently, when my other half's been making me salads, like one of the ingredients is just avocado. And I'm just like, oh my God, there's like avocado and he's using actual olive oil in the salad and actual feta and like all this stuff, and dark chicken meat. Like, I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I'm not gonna not eat it. And then I was just like, oh, I'm okay. I actually feel really good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I think it's like flavors again. It's like teaching your palate that there are healthy foods that taste good.
Yeah.
And they're good for you. Like, they're good for you, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But then there is stuff that you want to incorporate that isn't maybe as good for you. You know, like Steff, you say, we always joke about tiger loaf. You know, it's like, and we had this. I went to my friend George's wedding a couple of weeks ago, and me and Sophie, like, they brought out these like little roll things, and they were like still warm, and I was like, I've got to get some butter on those.
Yeah.
We had one, and we both just looked at each other, and we were like, should we have another one?
Amazing. Bread and butter is just, people forget how good that is. Warm bread and butter.
As soon as I felt it was warm, I was like, God help me.
Just like pile them up. Just like,
Does anyone want that?
I'll just take the tray.
Yeah. It's just so nice. I think it will be so nice for our listeners to hear us talking about, like we say, it's almost like the 3 stages of where you'd want to get to if you were coming away from competing, but also if you have literally just competed. So myself, and then Steff, you know, you're coaching people, and also you're going through potentially going back into a prep next year. So there's, we sort of covered all bases almost, which is really cool.
I always think as well, like, because I see a lot of people, like, I obviously coach a lot of people in their off season. I've got a few in off season at the moment. And we kind of, some of them use a hybrid of, I give them really healthy meal plans. So we've got, like, we're really lucky to have a nutritionist and a dietitian, and Andrew, but also we've got a couple of our team that are now registered dietitians, and they put together these really, really nice like meal plans as well for the off season. So we give lots of examples of things you can have, but tracking too as an option to get to that balanced approach. Because I don't believe in an off season being as rigid as a prep. I don't believe in it's a good way for a healthy body to just be and train and live and go and socialize and everything else. So the way I even approach my own off seasons is, yes, okay, I have to get certain things in because I want to progress my physique, but I want to be Steff Noble and live as Steff Noble wants to live as well, not just a figure girl standing on stage. Like, that's not all what I do and what I'm about. And I think a lot of people can get lost in bodybuilding with that. They think they have to be this all commandeering athlete 24 hours a day, you know, 34 weeks of the year or whatever, however many weeks we have. And yeah, I just think it can be really consuming, and you get to a point suddenly where that can actually be very damaging. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen to so many people where they just go, is this all I've got? And then suddenly break down. Yeah. And that's just a horrible, horrible thought as well, because you've got to live life to the fullest, right? And you can't do that food is such a huge part of living your life. Like, it's so big. You can't, for me, restricting that or not being balanced around it will cause issues somewhere. And that's something I've always kind of stood pretty true to, and I speak a lot about with my guys. But yeah, there's many ways to skin a cat, I suppose, with different coaching elements. But I think balance is key to a good off season, and that includes balance around food for sure.
Yeah. I think it's refreshing to talk like we have today, for people to hear our sort of experience, and also, you know, how they can put things into practice to either, you know, come away from competing, have some downtime, or whatever stage they're at. We've been able to offer that through actual real life experience, rather than just, you know, someone trying to learn it on Google. And that's what it's all about. It's sharing, you know, and empowering people to do what's right for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been great to have you back on again, Effie.
Yes,
Thank you so much for having me again.
I feel like we could probably find a subject to have you on a third time at some point if you were up for it, because there's so many things. Yeah, it's really nice it's refreshing, isn't it? And we love having guests on, Steff and I, and just getting different points of view. So thank you so much again for coming on.
Of course, thank you for having me. And
obviously, if people want to reach out to you or follow you, if you're happy with that still, your Instagram handle is
Effie_Parnell.
We are always up for subject topic suggestions, sharing on the Instagram story, or any feedback is always awesome, isn't it, Steff?
100%. Yeah, I love doing these with you guys, because I think there's not a lot of real genuine content out there from a lot of females that, you know, are in the sport, have done the sport, have different ideas around it, and food, and just generally health and fitness in general. So it's great doing these. So I love it. So please do reach out, tag us on your stories, and give us any ideas.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, ladies. And have a wonderful sunny day. We've all got a bit of sun in the background, so we should go and soak up some vitamin D.
Yeah. Lovely, guys. So good to see you both. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.